All right, everybody, welcome back to the Cleaning Professionals Podcast. I am Seth.
And I'm Patrick.
Patrick, I about forgot what I was supposed to say there for a second.
Surely not.
in a daze there. So we kind of got a fun topic again today. It kind of goes back to our hater episode a little bit, but the topic we're going to talk about today is, don't really have a title for it, but I guess it's more of social media isn't where you go to learn how to be a business-minded person. Would you agree, disagree?
I would definitely agree.
Okay, so that's where I get all my information from. I don't bother taking any classes.
Yeah.
I just go on Facebook and get everybody's opinions, and I go with
the
it.
best.
Usually I take one of the top 5 opinions and I use them all at one time and see
Yeah.
what happens.
Yeah. That's the best way to manage anything, right?
Yeah, you ever watch the show The Office?
Yeah.
You see this one where Date Mike, where he says, I watch the, what was it, the reality shows, dating shows?
Yeah.
And he says, I take all the bad advice and I use that. That's what I like to do.
Social media is always interesting, man. It's like, I mean, when I log on Facebook and I go in to look at some of those groups, it's funny and sad at the same time.
The good, bad, and the ugly of social media.
Yes.
And this is not to knock all groups, because you and I both utilize all these groups and get a lot of great information, a lot of great knowledge and wisdom. But we also don't take everything as the gospel truth either. You know, we're kind of dissecting what we learn from there, and you know, is it legit advice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of key. Is you use social media as a tool, and I go on there a lot for a lot of different reasons to talk with other guys and connect with them, and I learn. I mean, you see kind of what's going on around other parts of the country. Learn about new products, new trends, new ways guys are doing things. There's a wealth of knowledge that you can, that's there at your disposal on social media, but at the same time, I think you and I both know you got to use a lot of caution, because there's a lot out there that's just a bunch of crap. I mean, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And I think I see a lot of guys get sucked into that, believing everything they see and everything they hear, and I think it's fine for experienced cleaners, especially. I think a lot of the newer cleaners, it's really easy for them to be misguided.
Yeah.
What do you say?
Oh yeah. A lot of guys, they go on there and that's their like I said a minute ago, that's the gospel truth. That's where they go to get their information, and they really should be getting it through. I mean, there's so many other avenues. We were talking about in our episode, we were interviewing Eddie, your dad, and we were talking about there's so many classes you can get on YouTube that are 1 to 2 hours, but it seems to nowadays in this, I can't think of the word, where guys want to get information as quickly as possible, and they just want just a bit of information. They don't want to get the whole thing, you know what I mean? Which is good and it's bad, when you agree.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of times, like what you're saying, is the guys, just they a little something catches their eye, a post that somebody makes, and then everybody starts going back and forth with their opinion. And a lot of times too, I've seen people like to have their own opinion reinforced. So if, like, for instance, if you say, I don't vacuum, right?
Yeah.
I don't vacuum. Not saying I don't really, but like, say there's a guy that doesn't vacuum and he wants that opinion to be reinforced. It's really easy to go out looking for that and say, how many of you guys vacuum? And you make that post on one of the pages, you're instantly going to have a lot of guys. Well, I don't vacuum. And so then all of a sudden it's that's the right way. That's the right way to be. And so he gets his what he's thinking, his opinion, it gets reinforced. And so a lot of times they'll go out seeking, I think, to have to have what they already know reinforced.
Oh yeah.
So that's the big thing. And then it gets into, you have people that just literally, it's kind of like the blind leading the blind. They'll go out looking for advice, and guys are truly trying to help, and they're giving them advice that, really something they don't even know about. I see that all the time. I mean, I saw, this was in Cleaners Connect a couple weeks ago. A guy made a post about, carpet rippling, and I mean, you just had a plethora of answers about, this guy's scared to death. He's never had it happen to him before. You've been cleaning any amount of time, you've seen this happen.
Oh yeah.
But the guy's a new cleaner, he's scared to death, and there is every answer in there from, it's your fault to, no matter what, it's not your fault, to and everything in between. Of course, the guys freaked out. I mean, there's all sorts of bad advice in there. People giving explanations about why it happened that are wrong. You know, that I see a lot of people saying, well, obviously you got the carpet too wet. And if you ever, I mean, a lot of times the carpet setter are going to do that. If you understand why that issue happens, that, you know, moisture actually, I mean, it just takes the least little bit of moisture. You know, I mean, a lot of times I've had it happen to me when we're doing VLM on certain carpets. As soon as you pre-spray it happens. But there was guys calling him a hack, saying that, you know, you just blew through the back of the car. I mean, people just don't know. They have a little bit of knowledge, and so they try to share what they know, but really they know very little.
Yeah.
And so, like, that's why I say it's the blind leading the blind.
Yeah. Yeah, let's break this up into two categories and deal with the, I guess, the least important first, and that is the cleaning side of it.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is you can know very little about cleaning, whether that's floors, carpet, tile and grout, and have a successful business. You agree?
100%.
Because, I mean, those guys do it all the time. Guys who know nothing about a business, but they know how to run a business, and they come in and take over the business that's failing, and then flip it around and, you know, turn it into a profit machine like crazy. So.
Absolutely. I mean, you can be really good at marketing and very good at getting business, and not necessarily that great at what you do.
Yeah, but it's also good to know something about cleaning. And there's so many, we just mentioned this just a second ago, there's so many free cleaning classes available online, and so much of it is, so little of it is used. There's this one video, it's I think it's almost a 4-hour video on YouTube that goes through and kind of talks about the cleaning, basically almost similar to what you'd get if you paid $400 for an IICRC class.
Right.
That type of information, and it's got less than 1,000 views.
Yeah. And
it's been out a while too. I was thinking, why aren't carpet cleaners watching this? Because I watched it a couple of times, and I sent it to my wife for her to watch. I even sent it to the kid who helps me part-time for him to watch.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, you know.
Well, I think it's just the era that we're living in. People won't I mean, if you ever think about it, like, they have a really short attention span, and it's like something that's got to grab them. And even if you grab them, you have a very limited amount of time to keep them tuned in.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think so much that, like, on social media can be dangerous, because people just look for the stuff that's either controversial. Stuff is always really big.
Right.
You know, the controversial posts suck guys in, or the really simple stuff like, you know, arguing truck mounts or arguing pre-spray, stuff that really don't matter that much.
Okay.
That's the stuff really that gets people involved.
And that's one of the things that on my YouTube channel, I got or not at my channel, but one of the feeds popped up and said the algorithm for YouTube now is starting to cater short videos, less than 7 minutes long. And so it says, make sure you make your videos short. And I was thinking, well, you know, I usually don't do that long of videos anyway, but it's just different type of people too. I think the majority of people who want to learn, they don't mind spending an hour or 2 hours watching a video if it's something that's going to teach them something. You know what I mean? But if somebody's just out there, they just want a piece of information, then that's a totally different story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But like I think there's a huge difference between, you know, going on Facebook to socialize with other cleaners, going on Facebook to just kind of keep up with people. I mean, you know, if you think about the name of it, social media.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's so a lot of these groups are more based on, you know, being a social media platform for cleaners. So you can go on there and you can interact with other cleaners and things like that. But I don't think, you know, not that you can't get a good education on Facebook, but a lot of these groups, some people I think are making the mistake of solely trying to get most of what they learn from there.
Yeah. And controversy breeds through a lot of those. They're starting to find out through a lot of research that these companies like Facebook or Instagram, they purposely put at the top of the feeds controversial issues, because that gets the most clicks, it gets the most likes, gets the most shares, gets people riled up. And what happens when you get riled up? You share it with 2 or 3 other people. It gets you talking, basically.
Right.
And so I don't see how that's probably any different than the cleaning groups too. You know?
No, it's the same way, because if you really look at the most popular posts in these groups, it's normally either controversial stuff, or it's the same stuff that we've seen over and over again. You know, people like to be entertained. I think that's what I'm kind of going for. That in my mind, like with social media, most of it in these groups, the cleaning groups, and there's a lot of them that I know we're both a member of, but it's more about entertainment than it is the education for me.
Yeah. So here's the thing, you hear this said all the time, education, somebody who gets the education for cleaning carpet, we're talking about proper education, getting trained, whether that's hands-on training or whether taking classes, it pays for itself in the long run. How is that so?
Oh, because I mean, the more the thing is, the more education you get, the more confidence you build. Okay,
that comes off to the customer,
and that comes off to the customer exactly. And then the more confident you are, the more you're going to be able to set a higher price for yourself. I feel like it's like so many guys with upholstery. I know so many guys that are scared to clean upholstery, or they don't only say this. They don't only say, "I hate to clean upholstery." Now, I'm going to tell you, very few guys actually hate the process of cleaning upholstery. The reason they hate it is because they fear it. They don't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And if they would take the time to actually take a proper class and learn, either take a class or have somebody that, is experienced cleaning it to show them and spend some time with them, then they wouldn't hate it. They wouldn't fear it as much.
Yeah, exactly.
But instead of what you see a lot of times is, something like this. Instead of a guy going out and taking a class on upholstery, you just see a post that says, here's a picture of a couch. Here's a good example. Here's a picture of this sofa. Customer wants this clean. What's the process? How do I do it? Okay. And then you know what you're going to get? You're going to get everything from, some guys will take the time to make a real educated response to you, and then you'll get everything in between.
Yeah.
You'll see, okay advice, horrible advice, and then so this guy's sitting there and he don't know what to believe, right? So that's like a prime example of why you don't necessarily. And I want to be real clear. I'm not saying you can't learn on social media, because you can.
We all have.
You absolutely can. I mean, there's a lot of guys that learn a lot on social media, but I'm saying I don't think it's good for it to be your primary source of education.
Yeah. Now, this is just for me. What I like to do is, one of the guys I follow on YouTube, and he's put videos on there, he'll do something with a certain type of flooring. And what I like to do is, okay, I'll take his advice and I'll research it. You can research a lot of stuff through Google. You can find articles that are written. I think articles written are probably my number one source.
Right.
There's so many places out there where guys who have been in the industry for years and years, they've written 3 or 4 pages. That's the way I like to do it. Like I said, I get tips from these guys on YouTube, but then I kind of compare it. And I don't always do that, obviously, but if it's something that seems a little controversial, I was thinking back on the process one guy was doing to wood floors, and I was thinking, I don't think that's right. And so I researched it. Sure enough, I found a long article written on it, and the guy was saying, yeah, I do this, and he explained it why. It was very detailed.
Right.
I was like, okay, well, this guy knows what he's talking about then. So obviously what this guy went and spent 2 minutes on why he does this was actually right. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
For no reason.
And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said detail, because that's what's lacking, I think, a lot of times on social media is like, there's a lot of people speaking a lot of generalities on everything, but there's very little detail about, okay, this is what you do, this is why you do it, this is how you do it. It's just very, oh, that's easy. All you need to do with that couch is, this, and, collect check and done, and it's like, well, there's a little more to it than that.
Yeah, and going back to the upholstery, I think it's Legends Brand. Have you seen their video series they got on YouTube?
I have not.
They have like a 15 video series from 2 guys, and I wish I could remember their names, but 2 guys have been in the industry for years. They go through like,
you know what, I have seen that.
Yeah,
I watched
details.
one night. I watched one video. Now that you mention that, I do remember that. Yeah,
and it's probably all in all probably maybe 2 hours, not if 2 hours. The videos are like 10 minutes and they're broken up into segments, but the advice they give, unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, it tells you how to look like a professional when you come to somebody's house, and
Yeah, I think like there's this common belief, because a lot of guys are out on the ICRC for whatever various reasons. I think they've rubbed people the wrong way in the past or whatever. But a lot of guys, when they hear the word education, like formal education, they think, well, it's got to be just the ICRC. And I'm a fan of the ICRC, but like there's other, like you're saying, it's not always just all about ICRC certifications. There's all sorts of good education material out there.
So
that
Rob's
you can
got
take. Yeah.
countless.
Yeah, he's got countless.
Free stuff and stuff you can pay for.
Right, exactly. There's all sorts of sources out there, so don't feel like I'm just sitting here saying, oh, you don't know anything until you take an ICRC class. No, and just because you get certified in something doesn't mean you fully grasp it anyways.
Yeah.
But like, no, there are really good educational sources out there from classes, that you can go take in different parts of the country. And then if you can't travel, to like you're saying, I mean, all sorts of electronic education out there that you can find.
Yeah. And this is another thing too, that we'll get to in just a second, the business side of it. I'm sure everybody knows that at the end of the year, you're going to have to do one of two things: pay taxes or have tax write-offs.
Right.
You can use these education classes as tax write-offs.
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
pay them instead of paying the government, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully the government's not listening to me.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, like, what was it that Eddie said and that my dad said earlier about, you know, what it was about ignorance?
Yeah.
What was the saying he
Oh
said?
man, I wish I could remember what he
If
said.
you think education's expensive, try
Yeah,
ignorance.
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Been there, done that.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, we all have, but you know, some of it. You know, would you rather? What does the guys put on their feeds? A lot of times, where they went to school on Facebook, they put on the profile Hard Knocks,
Yeah.
and that's all good and dandy. But when you rather learn the right way instead of learn the hard way,
Yeah.
it
I mean,
pays.
sometimes there are situations where you're going to learn the hard way, but
Yeah.
I mean, given the choice, you obviously you don't want to learn the hard way unless you have to.
Yeah, and if I guess going back to your dad, you know, if you're thinking about getting into rugs, or you're thinking about getting into hardwoods, you're thinking about getting into tile and grout, and you've never done it before, there are so many guys you can call up who are super nice guys, and they probably wouldn't even charge you anything to ride along with them.
Right.
But then there's other guys who's like, yeah, give me whatever the price is, it'll be well worth it from you going and learning from them the mistakes they've made versus you going and making the mistakes yourself.
And whether you're pro the paid ride along thing or not, I mean, really you can't argue their point that is, you know, if you pay somebody, say $1,000 to come ride along with them, but if the knowledge you gain from that ride along, I mean, it could literally, you know, net you just thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in income. So you really can't argue with that logic.
To say it could save you thousands in damage too.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's, like you said, and this, we talk about this in a lot of episodes, but guys, reach out to local cleaners in your area.
Yeah.
Don't just feel like that, you know, you have to talk to people across the country. So many cleaners, and I know I'm just like harping on this because we talk about it, I feel like every episode, but they're so apprehensive to speak to other people, real people in their area, like not just on social media looking at somebody across the country. Like, there are people that if you'll just stop and take the time, most people will help you.
Yeah.
You know, I know I've helped people. I've been helped by people before when I've asked questions, or, you know, said I pick up, you know, the phone. Say I call Andy Perez. I know Andy's great. You know, he's in our Carolina Cleaners group. Andy's great with pretty much any kind of hard surface. Like, that's Andy's thing. So if it's VCT or if it's marble or anything like that, Andy's like the man. And so I picked up the phone before, like with marble floor, because I do marble, you know, and I'll call Andy if there's something, you know, with marble polishing or something. And so he's a great resource for me. So having those guys that you can pick up the phone and actually call is totally different.
Yeah. I remember I called Andy one time, and he actually inadvertently talked me out of getting into VCT. I was like, man, I get into VCT. I got a 175. That's some extra money to make on the side. So I called him up and I was like, well, I need to know. And he started going off all the stuff that I was going to have to get and the extra equipment I was going to have to buy. And I didn't have the heart to tell him because he was giving me some great tips and great advice. But probably about 5 minutes in the conversation, I was like, I'm out. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not even going to try to get into that. But having guys like that, if I wouldn't have called them, I would have found out the hard way.
Yeah.
You know? So.
And see, that's the difference. I mean, there's this fake world on social media. Not that you can't get real life knowledge and real life experience, but don't put all your eggs in that basket.
Yeah.
You know, don't come into the real world, talk to real guys, and that leads into a whole nother thing. And I might go down a rabbit hole, but it's like not everything is what it appears on social media. There's a lot of cleaners that represent themselves in a way that's not accurate, represent their business in a way that's not accurate. They will tell you things that are not accurate. Some of them, like I said earlier, just misled themselves, and then some of them are just be right out dishonest with you, or some of them are, you know, trying to shield a certain product or a certain process, certain piece of equipment, and they'll push guys that way knowingly mislead people.
Yeah.
Just to try to, like I said, some of them want to do it just to be a jerk. Some of them want to do it to try to make money, and they're trying to take advantage of people. So there's a lot of that out there. So it's like, if you're new right now and you're listening to this and you're spending a lot of time on social media, I would just say proceed with caution.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with getting advice on social media, but what we just talked about was find somebody in your local area who's been in the industry a long time and they have a successful business.
Right.
Just approach them, and you'll be surprised at how nice they'll be to you.
Exactly.
I approached a guy in Greensboro, Glen's Head, Zimmerman's Carpet Cleaning.
Yeah.
You know him.
Yeah.
Never met him before in my life. I went to the office one day, stopped by, met his wife. he called me. He wasn't at the shop. He called me later on and said, "Hey, let's meet for coffee." We met for coffee one day. Gave me tons of advice, tons of tips. I just wanted to meet with him because he's got a big company in Greensboro.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, let's just go see what this guy has to say.
Yeah.
He wasn't like, well, you think I'm going to give you advice for? He's
Right.
just a super nice guy.
And that's how
Yeah.
most people are. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not going to say you're not going to run into somebody that's going to be a jerk, but most people are willing to help.
Yeah.
And I think you're way better off in most situations to get real world advice from somebody like that.
Mm-hmm. Now let's switch it to the business side. We just scratched the surface there a little bit on carpet cleaning, but I want to talk to you about a post. I'm sure you may not have seen it, but one of the guys on one of the groups, I don't remember what group it was, made a post comparing a doctor's hourly rate.
I saw
that.
I didn't. I read the post, but I didn't. I didn't like go into the comments and see what was being said.
And it was kind of a deceptive post. Let me explain what I mean by that. He was saying, look at how much more carpet cleaners make per an hour, but he's not factoring in a lot of things. One thing he's not factoring in is the fact that that doctor probably is getting insurance through this company. He's probably, if he's paying anything, it's very little.
Right.
He doesn't have the overhead that we have. He doesn't have to buy new equipment. That's all paid for. So it's kind of a deceptive thing. So that's kind of what I think a lot of guys, they'll go out there. We talked about this when we were interviewing my dad and your dad. Where a lot of guys, they'll be doing it part time and they'll be like, holy, I just made
they just see
$200 in an hour on did a business job or whatever, made $200 an hour. I'm going to quit my job because I'm only making $20 an hour.
Right.
And then they go out there and they find out the hard way that no, that's not true. You're really not making that much money.
Right. And to just be completely honest, most cleaners that you will come across have no business training whatsoever, and they have no idea. If you just ask, if you walked up to a cleaner and you ask them, just some basic questions like, what's it cost you on average to acquire a customer? They have no clue.
Yeah.
What does it cost you hourly to run your business? They have no clue. What does it cost you hourly to run your truck mount? They have no clue. Most of them don't even know. And I'm not picking on anybody. This is not me making fun of anybody. I'm saying most of them don't even have a clear picture of what their profit and loss is. Like it's literally so basic. They just get the money and pay what they have to pay, and then they don't really even understand their numbers or figures at all.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to look and say, okay, well I just made $200 an hour, but they don't understand that. And a lot of the problem with that too is that can lead to like a lot of issues with pricing, because a lot of these guys that just think they're killing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Charging whatever, $15 a room or something. Yeah. And I'm not saying you can't be profitable at $15 a room. You might, depend on your business model, you might. But they don't understand really what they're actually bringing home.
Oh, yeah.
And so how that causes issues for people like me and you is they just keep the market tamped down, because you constantly have these cleaners coming out that are charging these ridiculously low prices. And the reason why generally is because most cleaners come out of an hourly job that they're paid, and they see that okay, well I was making $12 an hour, and then they look and they're like, holy crap. But they don't understand what they're truly making.
Oh yeah. And if there's any indication that you can raise your prices, just look at the price of lumber nowadays. People are still buying lumber left and right. They're complaining about it, but they're buying it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I forgot who it was. I read it somewhere. They said for a business owner, and this is probably 5 or 6 years ago, so I know it's gone up since then. You have to make at least $75 per an hour. That's when you're just paying yourself. You're not having employees to make it. To truly make a living.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys,
And another thing too is like, what's a living? It's like it's different to everybody else. But like I've always told people this, I'm not going through the trouble of running a business and dealing with all the hassles that come along with it, managing employees, managing equipment. I mean, my hands are busted up right now. But right before this episode, me and Seth just switched out. He helped me. He was nice enough to help me switch out a chemical injection on one of my trucks. And it's like, I'm not doing all this and marketing and, me and my wife are going to go on vacation next week. I won't have a day where I'm not on the phone multiple times a day talking to my guys. I'm not doing all this to make the same as I would make it at an hourly job. I want to do better. And I think so many guys that are starting out, they're just happy to be making a living, but you have to ask yourself, if I was in this to make $12 or $14 an hour, guys, I would just go, everybody's different. I'd just go work a job somewhere. It'd be a lot easier. You don't have to worry about nothing. You don't have a headache. You just show up, do your job, and go home. So it's like when you take on, and I can't speak for everybody, but for me, when you take on the responsibilities of a business, you need to know, like, what am I actually making it? Make sure it's worth your while for all the headache and what all you're putting up with.
Yeah, I've always wondered. CleanFacts, they do once a year where they'll do these surveys. Have they ever done a survey where they just ask the guys like financial stuff, like how many of you guys do a monthly budget, how many your customer acquisition costs, if I can pronounce it?
Yeah.
Have they ever done that before?
I would love to know if they have. It's possible. I can't say for sure if they have or not, but I would like to read. I just know most cleaners, if you ask them but just basic questions like that, they really don't have a clue.
Yeah.
If you walked up and you said, what's an average day carpet cleaning, what's your overhead every day? Most of them do not have a clue. Most of them don't have a system that keeps up with their books.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them probably can't generate a profit and loss report. So, yeah, there's definitely that.
Yeah, probably one of the things that helped me out, it was probably mid last year. I read, I heard it on a podcast, and I can't remember if I read the book or if I went and found some more interviews from the guy, but basically it was profit first. And that's one of the things that I started doing this past, probably around November, was I started paying myself first instead of waiting till the end of the month and seeing what I had left over and paying myself. Yeah. I said, well, no. The guy made a pretty good point was that, if you look at your budget for the upcoming month and it says, okay, I'm in the hole this month, I have to make this much money to make up for it because I already paid myself. Yeah. That puts a little bit of fire in you.
Right.
And you agree?
Yeah, I agree with that.
If you see, I'm 3,000 in the hole coming in this month.
Yeah, you gotta.
I need to get to work.
Yeah.
That type of thing. So, but that was kind of a side step there. But
another thing I was going to say too is a lot of guys that even if they're doing really healthy numbers, they won't realize too how many hours they're working to.
Oh yeah.
I see a lot of cleaners and they're working. Bragging about how much money they make, and they're working like 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That's fine, man. Yeah. If you want to work by that, that's fine. But you also have to think, if you were working any job 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, you're going to be making pretty good money. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it's about, like, for me, I know this is going off on social media a little bit, going off track, but it's about like, okay, well, it's not just the money you make. What kind of quality of life do you have? Can you spend time with your kids? You just clean carpet from sun up to sundown 7 days a week.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to think about, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, we should be using our business as a vehicle to get us the things we want. I can't remember, Howard Partridge, I think is one who said it much better than what I just did. But you remember that quote?
Yeah, I have heard it.
Yeah, but anyway. And there's another thing too with a lot of guys, they'll, like you said, they'll get caught up in the business and never do any reflection on it, never look back and say, okay, how's the business doing? Is it taking more of my time than what it should? Versus the money, is it really worth it?
Exactly.
And that's not saying you should get out of the business, but you should reevaluate some things. Courtney, we were talking about this earlier with Courtney, where he talked about, he was doing the interview, I think I was mentioning this, where he was going through the drive-thru. It was a life-changing moment for him, and he went to do his debit card, and it got declined. And he said that was a life-changing moment for him.
Yeah.
He said, that's it, I'm done.
Yep,
and he changed the way he did his business. And instead of, working for the business, he had his business working for him. He's making a lot more money, a lot happier.
Yep, that's the point. I mean, that you just really have to look at. I know so many carpet cleaners that stay really busy, but then, if you really look at how they live and the lifestyle they're able to live, it's like it doesn't add up. It don't equate with the amount of work that they're doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying you have to live up to any certain lifestyle. I'm not saying you got to live in a certain house or drive a certain car, but I've known personally in my life way too many carpet cleaners that they work. I mean, they're busy. It's not like, oh, they're struggling to get business. No, a lot of these guys are busy, but they're not. It's not equating to that kind of success.
Yeah, they're not factoring in the cost for equipment breaking down. Cost of gas is going up. What is the rate of inflation that goes up every year? 1.5%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, you got to factor in that.
You got to factor in so many different things.
Yeah, and I mean, we've already got 29 minutes, Patrick.
No, do we?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like we started.
Yeah, it doesn't. And I want to say this on social media too. And this is one of the biggest problems that I see. So you have you got the guys, like I said, that are, just they purposely, there's people on social media that will purposely mislead people. There's people on social media that will, like I said, the blind leading the blind type of thing. And then there's also people on social media that, I'm trying to think how to say this. there's a lot of guys that imitate other guys on social media, and how that's dangerous is they'll run out and do the things that this certain guy's doing, not realizing that they're nowhere near on. Well, we'll just use Courtney for example, and I really like Courtney in the stuff he does. I see so many guys imitating Courtney, but Courtney's been in this a long time. He's on his own journey. You know, this is like Courtney's. He's on his own path.
Yeah.
Okay, and if you watch him, if you go back and you start at the beginning with his YouTube videos, it's pretty amazing to watch the transition of his life and how far he's come. Like, it's great. Well, one thing I see is like, and this is not Courtney's fault, but like guys will imitate him or try to imitate him, and they want to jump in, and they're at the beginning of their journey, and they want to be where he's at, doing the things he's doing, and it just don't work that way.
Yeah.
You know, and that's just one example, and he's, you know, he's one person, but I see other people like that too, and they're thinking like, oh, well, he's doing this, I'll do that. Well, I mean, yeah, I'm not saying you can't do that, but it's a process. Like, Courtney didn't get to where he's at and doing what he's doing, like with the hardwood stuff and all that. He's on his own path. It's taken him a long time to get to where he's at.
Yeah, so like what your dad was talking about with people getting into the rugs. You know, they're trying to put the cart before the horse, getting all the equipment and knowing nothing about rugs.
Yeah.
You should really, rugs is a very, just from talking to him, you learn rugs is very complicated.
Oh, yeah, it's a nuanced thing. That's like so many there's so much in, you know, whatever it is, whether it's wood floors or rugs or carpet. I mean, it's just not, you know, like a neat little, you know, cube that fits perfectly into, you know, a square hole. There's more to it than that.
Yep. And let's leave the guys with some tips. What do you think for how to do social media safely?
Well, I would just say, you know, number one, and this is like the basic thing that everybody knows, but well, maybe everybody doesn't know it. They should know it, but, you know, don't believe half of what you see and none of what you hear. You know what I mean? I hate to say that, but don't believe everything. There's people that are disingenuous and misrepresent themselves.
People lie.
People lie on social media.
Get out of here.
So take a lot of what you see with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
You know, get your education from other places. I'm not saying don't use social media as a tool for education, but, you know, get education from other sources, other people. Have real life relationships with other cleaners.
Yep.
Right? Don't just rely just on talking to guys across the country that you don't really know. And I mean, also, don't always compare yourself to other people. I mean, I think a lot of guys get down on themselves because they're like, they see these guys doing these astronomical numbers, and, you know, they're looking at like, man, I'm not doing that. And it's easy to be like, you know, to get really down on yourself, where you look and you know, you say like, oh, well, they might be, like I said, they might be at a whole different, they might have been doing this for 30 years, or you just, there's so many different variables. So them are just some tips that come to my mind.
Yeah, bloom where you're planted, guys. Look at you know, not everybody's going to be able to be, you know, a Mark Sager or a Rob Allen, you know what I mean? You got to pick and choose. You got to figure out what it is that motivates you. Do what you love.
And one other thing I was going to say too, and this is another huge problem on social media, is, you know, I know it's easy for people to be resentful, or to be, you see so much resentment and jealousy on there. You will never ever be successful by resenting other people for success. But that is such a problem. I mean, and even guys that are like, oh yeah, I don't care about him, or I don't care about his success, but you just see it just comes out of them, like they can't hide it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they'll say like, well, I don't care about that, blah blah blah, but then you see the guy makes a post talking about his success, or, you know, I had this job today, and you'll see this, you know, for like a smart ass comment come out of this guy. You know, sometimes they'll come across as joking, and sometimes they are, but a lot of times it's just they're resentful.
Yeah.
And you'll never get anywhere in life. Like I said, you cannot be successful if you resent successful people.
Yeah. There's a difference between using that somebody's situation to motivate you and then resent them.
Oh,
so
yeah.
that it tears you down mentally.
Yeah.
And somebody used a good point that I like. They say you never see Michael Jordan on the forums, you know, basketball forums or whatever, talking about how great he is. You know what I mean? He doesn't have time for that. He's busy being Michael Jordan.
Exactly.
Know? So, I mean.
And like, I don't ever, what I always do is like, I tell people, I try to compete with myself.
Yeah.
So like, whatever my numbers were last year, that's what I'm coming after.
Yeah.
I don't ever look and I don't say, well, I'm doing more than this guy, or this guy, he's doing this, that ain't nothing, or well, that guy's doing more than me, I need to be, no, like whatever. I set goals for myself year to year. And if I say, okay, I did this amount this year, I want to do this much more upholstery, or this much more carpet or tile, or whatever the case might be, or I want to be here by the end of next year, I want to beat my numbers by 20% or whatever. I compete with myself. Don't try to compete with other people.
Yep. Anything else?
That's all I got for now.
This episode flew by too.
It did. It's all been flying by today. We were hitting like hour strides earlier.
Yeah. Guys, I'll leave you this in closing for me, and then we'll let Patrick say some words before we finish out here. Just remember your vehicle. I mean, your business is your vehicle to get to your dreams, right? Just use it as that. If you keep that in your mind and you say, okay, I want this business to get me to where I want to go in life, and you focus on that. You focus on your goals, 10-year goals, 5-year goals, whatever. You'll be much happier than try to always comparing yourself to other people. Just focus on your goals and your dreams and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think if you find yourself in business and you're just existing, that's when you really need to sit down and have a really long look in the mirror and say, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to change things up a little bit. Don't be afraid. I mean, there's people that I know that 20, 30 years in, they just made a they had always done it a certain way and just got by.
Yeah.
And then it was like they got tired of it and they made a drastic shift, to changing sometimes you just have to change the way you do things to get to that next level of growth.
Right.
So.
All right, guys. As always, we thank y'all for listening. Don't forget you can reach us at cleaningprofessionals@gmail.com. You can also leave us an audio comment if you go to the description of this podcast episode, and we'd love to hear from you. Tell us where you're from and what you like about the podcast, how much Patrick has made you ill talking about social media. He does all our negative comments, so reach him.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks.
It's done.
I might have got you saying it's done.
Yeah. We'll take it out.
Done.
Finito.
This has been a long Sunday.
Yes.
Between me making you into a mechanic and...
Yeah, I started to say I really helped you out there by watching you.
You were there for moral support.
Yeah.